this sport.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co host, Ed Carbajal. Weekly, we are brought to you by AllAccessMMA.com. Check out AllAccessMMA.com for our video podcast, MMA stories, and MMA news. Ed, you're not wearing a gas mask. How you hanging in out there, brother?
All right. It's actually today's the better of the last 3 days of getting the smoke out there from. Shout out to our boy up north at James Lynch, throwing us all the smoke. It must be all the smoke from that fire UFC card happening this weekend. Up in Canada for UFC 289. But yeah, no, I'm good, man. I mean, yesterday was the worst day. I was actually we didn't record yesterday. It was kind of good because it was actually hard for me to talk. We had like the worst air quality in the whole like nation or whatever. It's like it was like the worst numbers ever. I mean, usually we get bad air quality days when it's like super hot. You know, with New Jersey being as dirty as it is, so we get all that garbage baked in the heat. It makes the air pretty bad. But like now, it's like this is all. It was pretty apocalyptic, but like not nothing. I mean, the way we kind of reacted to it, the way you guys react to rain out on your side of the country, because apparently that's nothing to you guys with all the fires that you guys constantly encounter.
Yeah, we're definitely used to the wildfires, but there's definitely a lot going on up there. Some of those pictures of New York and such are
Yeah,
pretty
I put a
wild.
picture from yesterday and today, and you could see from around the same time, and you could see literally like the sky was orange, and around 2-3 o'clock it looked like the way it normally looks around 7:30, 8 o'clock, this time of year around here. So it was pretty bad. But I mean, like as all bad things happen, they past, and we're moving ahead. So speaking of moving ahead, I mean, we're recording late this week, Thursday. Um, big UFC pay-per-view weekend, and we're going to be doing our preview for that momentarily. But there's other news we should get to first, as of our interest peaked. Bellator released the broadcast details of their Bellator Rizin second event of the year. I guess it's second because they did the New Year's Eve, so that's like the end of last year, beginning of this year. But yeah, man, it's July 29th when everything else is happening. So you and I, as soon as that those details came out, it's gonna be on Showtime, only the Bellator portion, and then after that, all the like Ryzen stuff is gonna happen. So if you're gonna make it a late night, you'll get the Bellator stuff on Showtime first, and then you can stay up through and watch the rest of the card. But that's gonna be a hard night to stay up because what do we have that night? A UFC pay per view plus the boxing.
Not just the UFC pay per view. You got Gagey and Poirier. So if
Yeah.
anything, you're going to be lit up and ready to watch watch more fights or continue the run. But the crazy thing is that the UFC main event and the boxing fight will probably kick off about the same time, and then
Mm-hmm.
you'll be an hour into Bellator. So at that point, you'll be getting into some of the real meaty fights that they've got going on that card.
Yeah, because
Um,
Bellator's at 11 p.m. my time, so that's like
an
it's
hour into the pay per view.
like if you're gonna try to watch everything, which you and I already said we are, we're gonna probably use every screen in our home to try to
Yeah,
watch
yeah,
everything.
yeah. It'll take transformation of the living room to
Yeah.
pull that off. But yeah, some great fights, man. Bellator
Hmm.
really doing it. I'm guessing also because these are basically all straight Bellator fights, and I keep
Hmm.
hearing Bellator versus Rizin as opposed to just kind of a co-promotion where they each have their fights. So
Hmm.
I'm wondering if the Rizin part of the event, which will air after the
Hmm.
Showtime in this Bellator card, I wonder if that'll have versus matches where we'll get the some of the a award versus a Asakara or something like that.
Yeah, because I know Archuleta and I forget who he's fighting on the card, and Tofik Musiev are on the Ryzen portion, but they're Bellator guys.
Okay, cool. I haven't
Yeah,
looked at that part of the card yet, so
I tweeted about it, wrote about it, but that's already a couple weeks old, and with all the smoke inhalation, my mind's not working as good as it should.
I'm gonna look into that real quick because that obviously answers my question on that, which
Hmm.
means that it's just gonna be an epic night of fighting.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. They're definitely like I forget who was it. I think it was Josh Nash. Like he did like some real research, like as he always does, about like people always like to talk about, and you got everyone always pumps up their own numbers, but when I think it was like the most profitable MMA promotion in the world when he researched it, it turned out to be Rizin Fighting Federation because they're literally just pay per view, and they sell out arenas, and so it's pay per view and ticket sales, and as far as making profit, it's them. And if they keep on putting on shows, like we saw New Year's Eve, and like we're looking at at the end of July, I mean, like I don't want to say it's Pride 2.0, even though we always kind of hint at that, but they're definitely like on the way to doing that.
Yeah, yeah. There's never going to be a Pride 2.0. It can never, because they'll never have the best roster in the world, and that's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
that's
because the
just the
sport's too
reality.
big now. Yeah.
Sports too big now. They can have the best weight class, at a certain weight class. They can have multiple weight classes. That they're the best fighters in the world, but they'll never have the roster where that Pride had. Particularly heavyweight,
Hmm.
but even light heavyweight, and then as they went down, they had lighter weights too, which well, while they weren't around in Pride as long,
Hmm.
obviously developed some of the biggest names the sport's ever seen.
Hmm.
Um, so with that said, I mean, obviously, the newest announced fights: Lorenz Larkin, Korshkov 2. Their first fight was out here in my neck of the woods at
Hmm.
Pechanga Casino. Ended in a split decision for Larkin. Um, wasn't the most barn burner fight, but I feel like it's one where you expect there to eventually be some major fireworks. So perhaps another 3 rounds will give us the exclamation point that we kind of thought maybe we were going to get with their first fight.
Yeah. Yeah, and then if I'm not mistaken, I believe they added Danny Sabatello.
Against
Uh,
the double Megamed.
yeah, which should make for oh, this is their old. They didn't put it on their website. I have to look at the press release from yesterday. It's not on the website, which is weird.
I'm just on Tapology. Korshkov, Larkin, Megomedov, Sabatello,
Oh, here
Vita
we go.
Arteaga, Kano Watanabe, Horiguchi, Shinryu, and McKeon, and
Yeah,
Patricky Pitbull. So I mean, loaded
and
start
that's
to the
just their
card.
portion. That's just their portion. Like
Right now,
the
I'm seeing
yeah.
on Tapology, I'm seeing Kaya Sakara versus Juana Choleta
Hmm.
for the bantamweight championship,
Yeah, I
and,
found it on their website too. The
and
Watanabe Vita Ortega card is that's those are all great fights.
yeah, I mean that looks like that's the main Bellator card. That looks like that's pretty locked in to be the Bellator portion, and then
Hmm.
obviously I think there'll be some bleed off over into the other. Uh, the other portion of the card. Obviously Archuleta, but he kind of signed up for like a year's worth
Mm.
of work in Rizin. So um,
Yeah, he fell in love it with Japan when he went over there New Year's Eve, and it looks like he didn't come back. But
yeah, I mean, I don't blame him. I'm
hmm
just watching on TV, and I fell in love with some of the stuff
I mean,
they
there's
do.
something about just the presentation of it that even I know we talked about it after the fact, but when Khabib was for that New Year's Eve event, Khabib was in house for that, and there's like images of him just with his jaw dropping, like holy, he was literally just like I never watched Pride, I didn't know they did it like this over here, like he was just like I this is they're doing it wrong, they're doing it wrong everywhere else, and I mean I know you and I agree with him because yeah, I mean like I said, you kid that I know you said you've got those vibes when you were in Colorado for one championship, but
Mhm.
like I mean, MMA is big enough now. You can do the fireworks and the WWE type entrances. Like you can do that now, and I think people would love it. I think people would love it.
Yeah, there's no confusion anymore. There's no, there is obviously the WWE mixed with UFC as
Mhm.
far as endeavor, but there's no confusion. Fans are smart enough,
Mhm.
and if they're not smart enough, then they'll still be amused by the
Yeah,
walk-ins
because
and
look
the
what happened. When
pageantry.
everybody keeps talking, they're still talking about when Israel Adesanya did his little dance number when he walked in, or he did his
Mhm.
Undertaker thing, and that was like low level compared to stuff that we've seen in Pride in Japan. I mean,
In Japan, there would have been lightning bolts coming from the
yeah,
sky.
yeah,
Like there would have
yeah.
been zombies walking along. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah. yeah, exactly. And everybody would have loved it. Like now, especially now when we look at the fan base now, though, I mean, and the people that are covering the sport and everything now. I mean, you can't say that I think it's time. The sport is big enough. It's time to evolve the presentation of it too. I mean, you got to do something new to keep people interested. I think anyway.
Well,
But
everybody else is doing it
mhm.
essentially. I mean, PFL's not, but they still have a ramp and they still have a small stage. I mean, they're a
Yeah, but they
smaller.
have a unique format. That's what I'm saying. Like you got to do
Yeah,
something different.
but
I
as
mean, I
far as
know.
presentation goes, Bellator's obviously had the ramp for
Mhm,
quite a long time now, and one like a one
mhm,
rivaled Pride as far as the stage.
mhm,
At least I never went to a Pride in Japan, but the U.S. Pride like
mhm.
fairly similar. Um, but there are the most a lot of there's KSW. I mean, they just had their event in the
And an arena, yeah.
yeah, like, and they're popping off 90,000 people at events in
Mhm.
Poland and stuff. So, I mean, there's definitely other stuff out there that kind of feeds maybe what me and you are looking for a little more than some of the
Yeah, I think
no.
it's time to get there. I mean, there's definitely time to get there.
Yeah, exactly.
But speaking of some things evolving, some things not. We would be remiss without mentioning before we go into 289 preview the I guess it's controversial judging from last weekend's fight night with Kaikara France and Amir. I know a lot of folks are huffing and puffing about it, but this is like the same old when it comes to combat sports, whether it be boxing or MMA. I mean, there's always going to be something funny about judging. I think the best the best if you're going to be devil's advocate when we had excuse me Jesus, why am I forgetting his name?
Wheelock?
uh yeah, Sean Wheelock on, and he talked about how judges' perspectives, the reason why we get those odd numbers. If you haven't listened to that podcast episode, I'd suggest you guys go back and listen to it, because he gives the best, at least a way for you to understand why we get the freaky numbers that we get because of their perspective and how they watch. Um, that's now ever since we had him on, and I see stuff like that happen, especially in a fight like that. I mean, you and I were talking about it before we started recording. It was a good fight. It wasn't the Caceres, the fight before that. And that fight was freaking awesome. Like that one was something that like held your attention. But this 5 rounds, and again, not to take anything away from either fighter, but it wasn't something that actually had me like, it wasn't Brandon Moreno, Figueiredo, any of them, as far as entertainment wise. So I didn't the 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 decision didn't really bother me, but I get where people are coming from too. But it's just like you were saying before we started recording, about
Yeah, the reality is that we've been fight fans have been complaining about the judges going back to the
Mhm,
ultimate when it was Tektarov and Huas.
mhm,
I mean, like it's been nonstop. But the
mhm,
reality is, in 2023, there's only one thing that can change the way judges judge and the way that um, fights are judged in general, and maybe even how rounds and all. The UFC controls everything. They are the only entity that has the power to put pressure on commissions to change this stuff. Because a smaller organization, a smaller um, commission from a smaller state can't put the pressure on Nevada, can't put the pressure on
mhm.
all these other states, New York,
Yeah.
California, because the UFC controls that, and the UFC can shut down anything they want to shut down.
Mhm,
So when it comes to mixed martial arts world, and they just have the money. They have the money and the power to do it. So really, nothing's going to change in any of this judging, in any of the refereeing, in any of the weight cut scenarios, in anything, in any of the rules. I mean, grounded knees should have been legalized 10 years ago.
mhm.
I mean, there's only one way that could be fully pursued, and that would be the UFC. One is trying. One got into Colorado,
Mhm.
but there's a reason why we haven't heard of a second state yet. You know what I mean? Like there is some, you know. maybe they can get it, maybe they can't. But the bottom line is, if the UFC wanted to have grounded knees, we'd have them after the next rules meeting. Uh,
Mm.
whether it be through greasing pockets or whether it be through
Yeah, I mean,
actually
let's
just,
be honest. Yeah,
you
let's
know what
be
I
honest.
mean?
Like
Like,
everyone's talking about Connor and the USADA stuff. Depending on where it happens and where they hold that event, it's not going to matter. Like not for not let's stop screwing. John Jones can fight with all the picograms he wants now because of as long as they do it where they have the most flex. So let's not act like it's not, come on. I mean they let's not act like we don't know how the game is being played now. Like it, it's
they control
ridiculous.
everything.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a reason why 75% of events that get announced now are Apex cards. It's an easy money grab. They don't have to worry
hmm
about sales. They don't have to. They don't. It's easy. They put it on
yeah.
TV. They've basically already been
Yeah,
paid by
it's the
ESPN.
UFC's work from home. I know Dana White joked around like it's his work from home because they own the venue. They control everything. And the other thing about it too is like there's a recipe, and I was talking about it on Twitter with folks that know more about the business side things than we do, and it's literally created and I know you can speak to this because you're the one that sees it more than I do. It's created this demand for tickets when they do leave Nevada that it's almost guaranteed now that they're gonna sell out no matter where they go because they don't go to the places they used to go to the way that they did before COVID. Now because of all these Apex cards, when they do, it's a big deal when they fucking came to Newark, New Jersey,
Yeah, but Newark's still
and
a hotbed for MMA. Like, they went to Brazil and the arena was
yeah,
like
no, but no, no,
huge,
no,
almost empty.
Newark is not a hotbed for
But
anything but
it,
getting murdered.
you're right. You're right as far as New York, but the
But
state of
that's
New,
the
New
thing. That's
Jersey, but it's been involved. They have a long history with MMA.
Yeah, no, no, yeah. New Jersey does, but it's like people were kind of like more into that card than ever before. And I'm speaking as someone that's seen and that's been to the Prudential Center for fight cards. I mean, that type of I mean, when you saw all these media characters that travel, they weren't coming to Newark before COVID. Now they come to Newark. Now you have the media traveling circus that travels with the circus. You know what I
But that
mean?
was a
And
pay-per-view too.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
they're getting
yeah.
rolling with the pay-per-views again. It's the fight nights that are hurting. It's the
Yeah,
fight nights that used to be in New Mexico
yeah.
or you know what I mean, like San Jose or wherever. Like,
Mhm,
there's cities that are they're not rewarding the smaller cities. They're going to the bigger venues, and they seem to like Salt Lake City now. They seem to like, obviously they have Vegas. You're going to
mhm,
get your one or two in New York a year. Um, it it's what they can do. It's just not the Apex product is not what I'm looking for. I mean, we're talking about fireworks and lasers
My I
and
wonder,
entrances. Like, that's the total opposite.
like I'm surprised no one's asked this too, but with the folks that are getting credentialed these days, I'm not surprised. But um, this is a fair question that I think that Dana White would like. Like they do so many Apex cards. I'm wondering. I mean, I know they're expanding it to try to be able to seat more people. Um, but I'm wondering, like, with all the PIs, they talk about building a lot of PIs. I'm wondering if they would consider building another Apex, like maybe on the East Coast, and obviously I'm saying East Coast because that's where I am. But like, would it be worth their while to build another Apex on the East Coast where they can hold events and control everything? I guess it depends on the commission that of the state that they put it in.
Yeah,
Is
no, I
the
mean, I
answer to
imagine
that?
it's probably
Yeah.
something that you probably just they're probably gonna be apexes all over the.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is, it's not like their home base is in, you know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Dothan, Alabama. You know what I mean? Their home base is in Las Vegas.
mm-hmm.
They literally could set up that octagon like a third of a mile down the street, and there would be an arena where they could put in fucking 4,000 people. Like, that's the thing. Like, sure, you can
Mm-hmm.
have as many fights out of Vegas you want, but why do we have little like aluminum bleachers that hold, a couple hundred people? Like,
Yeah.
what are we like? And it just, man, it doesn't make the UFC feel like a big fight. And I can't imagine being a fighter who signed off King of the Cage or signed off some regional show, signed off of the uh our buddies fights in Pittsburgh
Mm-hmm.
or Ring of Fire, and then showed up to a UFC crowd and it was 1/10 of
Two
the
four
crowd.
seven, two four
Two
seven
four
fights.
seven
Yeah,
fighting
yeah,
championships.
yeah.
Um, like those events have, I don't know how many people you get, but I imagine you get a couple thousand people there, and then you show up to your UFC debut and there's 87 people in the crowd. Like, how is that? It it seems weird. It's
Mm.
like graduating Duke basketball and
Yeah,
then
no,
going to the NBA and then start playing in front of three people
and I know it's definitely been an issue because that's one thing that did happen last weekend that Tim Elliott like couldn't get seat tickets for his family to come watch him fight because it was in the Apex. And when the Braves soul that did ask of Dana White about that in the post event press conference, he gave him kind of like a non-answer where he was just like, "Oh no, it's only the main event guys that get the tickets for their families and stuff." So he didn't really answer why Tim Elliott got like you're gonna do anything for him about that, but it is what it is. But we do have pay per view coming
with
this
that said,
weekend.
there's a couple good fights this weekend.
Yeah, yeah.
A couple good fights on a mediocre
Let me bring it
pay
up.
per view overall. C minus card, but uh, two nice headliners. So I think that's kind of where we're at, other than these mega events, other than maybe
It
Fight
is them
Week.
in Canada, so that's a big deal. Again, going back to what we're talking about, creating demand for people to go try to go see them. I already saw people posting pictures of, oh, I just landed in wherever they're at in
I'm
Canada, and
sure. I'm sure they're going to a country for the first time in a long time, one that had a rich history of supporting the UFC like crazy. So you think they'd show up with a powerhouse card. Um, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm always negative. I understand that when it
yeah,
comes to what's been going on recently, but
it's
um,
it's hard to be positive for us fucking old heads, but I mean,
with that, like I said, we have two good fights. I'm gonna watch. They're gonna, um, Amanda Nunes, Irene Aldana, and Benil Dariush and Charles Oliveira, um, really carrying the weight of this card. Um, Dan Ige, Nate Landwehr will be a barn burner. That fight is a
yeah,
great fight. Um,
that's like the one. There seems to be a lot of Mike Malone, Adam. Uh, I don't want to mispronounce his name because it looks like I'll say it like fuck it, but
Fugit.
Fugit, yeah, but Fugit. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. But either way, like this fight seems to be getting a lot of attention because of Mike Malott being undefeated, and he's a heavy favorite at -205. So that's going to be one that I honestly, before we started recording, Matt and I were talking about this card. This is a fight I can't pick because I don't really know enough about these two fighters. But let's work our way up to the main event. With Marc Andre Barriault versus Eric your boy Anders.
I think Barry Alt's going to win the fight. I think Anders is kind of teetering perhaps
Mm-hmm.
on Bellator. Um, and yeah, I mean, I just think Barry Alt wins probably by decision. Anderson's a tough dude. Obviously, he carries a big punch. Slight underdog on the money line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'll go with Barry Alt by decision myself.
Hmm. It looks like I'm just as we're clicking through the UFC.com uh, information on this card. It looks like the numbers lean to them either man having the greatest chance of winning by some form of knockout or TKO. Um, by that, I have to agree with you on that first fight that opens a card. Then the next one we have Dan Ige versus Nate Landwehr, which is again that's if you're looking for if you're trying to pick who's going to win bonuses for fight of the night, this is one of them.
I'd love to see Landwehr win this fight. He's wild man. Ige is a bigger name,
Mm-hmm.
somebody that the fans recognize. That's why perhaps um, the betting odds are a little bit heavily favored towards him. I think he's
Mm-hmm.
about 2.5 to one favorite. Um, I do think he's a little bit more refined, so he probably figures out a way to kind of counterpunch his way and damage up Landwehr.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you know, like I said, I'd like to see Landwehr just go in there and be the maniac he is, and we probably will see that anyway. But I just think that he might open himself up to getting hit too hard. I mean, half the battles when you go in like a maniac, the reason everybody remembers is because the other dude was hitting you a lot of times too. So
Hmm.
I think Danny Gay wins by like perhaps late finish or decision.
Yeah,
But I think that yeah, I think he's just too crisp, a little bit more refined.
yeah. They have him at minus 260 versus oh, jumped ahead there. Minus 260 versus Landwehr at plus 220. So I definitely agree with you on that one. I could see him. I see him edging it out. And then this fight again. Keep got a lot of pop just now in the press conference. Um, he's like undefeated in his last five or whatever it was. I forget what his record was. That everyone keeps on pumping this guy up. I obviously he's the draw because of where they're at. It's Canada and first time there in a long time. So I'm assuming that's why folks are leaning towards him. But looking at these stats on the UFC's website, it looks like Adam is I'm gonna say Adam shuts him down, not for nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Again, not
They have
overly
him as the
educated on these
underdog.
guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Millet to win by a submission. He's won by
Mm.
submission in 3 of his last 5 fights. If you go back to the stats there, it looks
Mm-hmm.
like both of them are fans of submission. 56% of
Mm.
Millet's career as opposed to 43. So I think there's a good chance based off those numbers that the fight ends up on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps at that point then I'll go with Millet to win by decision, or I'm sorry, submission. Um, Maybe halfway through the fight, and
Mm.
then, or if not, obviously, control the position and be able to grind out a decision.
Then we have our co-main event: Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush. Who do we got? Obviously, well, they have Oliveira. You know what? I don't disagree with these odds with Oliveira being the underdog against Dariush because I've had my criticism of Oliveira as good as he's performed in some fights. The fights that I thought he was going to lose, he won, especially when he fought Justin Gaethje, but he damn near lost that fight because of how he won. um, and the way he fights, like he tries to fight like Justin Gaethje, and he doesn't have the body or he doesn't have Justin Gaethje parts to fight like Justin Gaethje, where he does this thing and allows people to get aggressive and knock him down so he can engage him in his grappling. That's not a. I know it's been working for him most of the time, but that's not something you really want to do against anybody, especially someone like
It
Beneil
didn't work. It
Dariush.
didn't work for the very first half of his career. It's
Yeah.
worked outstanding since, and obviously he's going to end up in the record books as
Hmm.
one of the best fighters in UFC history.
But if I can finish what I'm saying, Beneil Dariush, I'm picking Beneil Dariush for that reason, just to win this fight. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that that's what I was kind of thinking you were going to go with, and I'm kind of leaning the same way. While Dariush maybe isn't a maybe an ace at anything specific, I don't know if those odds are accurate. That would shock me honestly if he was
Well,
favored.
those are the DraftKings that they always post on.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. So I mean, I would have thought those would have been reversed. I would have thought Oliveira would have been the slight favorite just
could
based
be
off,
wrong too.
you know, that's what I mean. Like that
Yeah.
shocked me when you saw that. I thought it was reversed of that. Um,
Yeah.
Dariush is just a solid fighter who's on a hell of a run, and um, the only question is whether he packs a big enough punch to really
Hmm.
damage Oliveira, which certain guys have over the time of his career. Where you're able to hurt him and he kind of folds up, and now he's again. We've seen later in his career that change, but there's always it's not like the other fights disappear from mind and memory and what So we'll see what happens, but I think Darius is just on a run.
Hmm.
And I think I see everybody I see is picking Oliveira, so I'm going to stick
Hmm.
with you on that and go with Darius to I want to say shock the world, but it's not really. But
Yeah.
even though he's a favorite according to this, I think it would be shocking to a lot of people if Darius wins this fight. And with a win here, I mean you couldn't deny him a title fight any more longer.
You bring up a really interesting point, though. Like these odds that we're mentioning as we record are off of UFC.com, and they come from DraftKings, so that's their official betting partner or whatever. I'm wondering if that skews anyway because of the whole fan base and the way things are now with the UFC. Because I actually do better when I play on FanDuel, and I know if you guys follow me on Twitter, I always post my wins up, on night of the fight. They have better odds and better ways to win there. So I'm wondering, you know what? I should check Odds Checker before I move on to the main event because Odds Checker US, they usually bring up the all the odds. So I want to see if
And it's possible the UFC website just sucks.
because if,
Because
if
we
you if you've been following, that's been a running gag on this for us for quite some time. So let's just check really quick
it
because
just shows up. It just shows up good on the video here.
hmm?
It just shows up good on the video here.
Yeah. So they're not showing all of them. Hold on, they're not. They're literally. Yeah, it's not showing the whole event. Sort by. Hold on. Sort by. Yeah. Yeah, they're not showing. They're just showing the main event on Odds Checker. That site used to be a lot better.
Hmm.
Oh well.
Well, that gets us to the main event. Amanda Nunes
Mm-hmm.
defends her bantamweight title against Irina Aldana. Semi-late replacement for
What
Pena.
they get for not hiring me? Psychos shit. But go ahead.
um, I'm not sure how exactly you see this one. In my mind, I've been thinking Nunes will probably try to we'll probably kind of try to layer Durandamy Aldana, you
Mhm.
know, um, basically,
Yeah,
and take some shots, but fight through it and be able to get takedowns and win rounds. Maybe rounds she even gets hit hard. She pulls it out because she ends up on top for 3.5 minutes of the
yeah.
round. Um, but after she just seems like she's not. I'm not seeing like the
Hmm.
killer in her eyes that like we saw when she fought, Rousey and Cyborg, and kind of when she was just murder, destroying people. Um, so I kind of am thinking Aldana, her comment something about like she could be okay losing the title to Aldana, but was
No, yeah.
like that kind of attitude, like the fact that that would even go through your mind
Mhm.
seems odd to me. So I'm kind of thinking like she's looking past this and more into being a mom and
Mhm.
just kind of stepping away from the sport. And um, so so I mean, this just after watching the face off and kind of her
Yeah,
how comfortable she looked in the crowd, and
which was
you
just
know,
before we started recording. Yeah, yeah.
which was literally minutes before uh, we clicked play here, and
Hmm.
so I'm going with Aldana. I don't. I'm going with her, and I'm kind of leaning towards an early finish. I'm kind of thinking like she hits her really hard and hurts her early, and Nunes maybe goes into that defensive mode and
Hmm.
kind of gets raked up a little bit, trying to get that takedown. And
Yeah.
um, I mean, Aldana's got crisp boxing. She always has, going back
Hmm.
to her Invicta days. So and she's bigger. Like that's something we don't see a lot with Amanda Nunes, is somebody who kind of looks physically bigger and Donna's strong. Um,
Well, they have. I mean, the stats on the website have Amanda Nunes having a bit the reach advantage here.
even leg reach, but
So but you're right. The height she's good. She's got
only an inch. I'd argue it's
yeah.
probably more than an inch based off what we just saw.
Hmm.
Now she might have been in high heels or something, so there
Hmm.
could have been a slight, obviously, with the weigh-in
Yeah,
thing.
but
So
I mean, I think you and I are on the same page. I mean, my reason is because, as you listeners know, I'm Mexican, and it would be nice. It would be nice to have another Mexican belt holder in the UFC, especially with the September 16th date they just announced. Shout out to our boy Nolan King over at MMA Junkie for announcing that a couple of days ago over that it's going to be at T-Mobile Arena September 16th. So it looks like they're trying to fix the mistakes they've been making with their Mexican champions, and if it's only underlined by Aldana winning this Saturday, I'm gonna
what
go
what
nuts.
what happened? We got a UFC on September 16th now.
Oh yeah,
Is
September
that the one?
16th.
Is that the one in? That's not Boston though, right?
No, Boston is August.
Okay.
So
Okay.
September 16th, uh, they just booked it,
T-Mobile.
Yeah, it's going to be T-Mobile. So I mean, it looks like they're going to finally capitalize on that date and the Mexican fan base in combat sports. Which why wouldn't you? Because I mean, not for nothing, all boxing likes to put everything on Canelo, and Canelo's with Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn likes to do things, on outside of the U.S. So why wouldn't you? And I think it's finally it took the shout out to the Mexican media that goes to events and ran that into Dana White's head to point out to the fact that you're messing up because you got all these Mexican strap holders and you're not doing anything with our fan base. And never mind going to Mexico, which I've written about a bunch of times over at My MMA News. But if Aldana wins, it'll be literally like now you have to start recognizing. I mean, it's high time that fan base, that the reputation of Mexican fighters have in boxing, we're finally seeing it. We've always seen it. It's not like we haven't seen it, but there's a really good Miguel Torres documentary on YouTube, by the way, that I shared earlier this week. Check out my Twitter feed because it was like catching up with him now. I even shared it with Brandon Royval because he told us when he was on the podcast how much he liked Miguel Torres. It's a really good documentary. But all that to say is if Aldana wins, she's plus 265 based on the odds too on their website. So if you put money on Aldana and she wins, there's a lot of good things coming. I mean, the guard doesn't change more than anywhere else than in MMA either, right? So like everything you said, I noticed it too. I feel like Nunes is just, it feels a little bit forced, like forced enthusiasm.
Mhm.
So I'm with you, man. I'm picking Aldana to win because I want her to win. I can't say, for any other reason, technique wise, other than the fact that I'm jumping on the Mexican bandwagon because I'm Mexican.
She throws hard, straight punches. That's
Mm-hmm.
really all you. I mean, that's that. Nunes is a little bit more of a winger,
Yeah.
more of like a cyborg style of big punches. So if you
But
bring
she's
that,
funny though because she'll do that like what you just said. That was a perfect example because Nunes did that to Cyborg. Like she will adjust her game, but she has to. We have to see the right version of her
Mhm.
do that, and everything we just saw. I mean, we're definitely on the same page.
Nice. Also, BKFC this Friday. So uh, that
And there's a
and
one
UFC.
fight night, I believe, on
One Fight Night
Amazon.
Amazon,
Hmm.
correct. Also, both that's 8 p.m. Eastern, and BKFC is also 8 p.m. Eastern. So that's your Friday night entertainment. PFL on right now, I think. Not hard to tell though. With
The great bar advertising that they do.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have ESPN Plus, you're probably watching that instead of listening to this. But this will always be, up there for you to listen to on Spotify and YouTube and everywhere the hell else that we put this thing.
We've kind of
So,
been like PFL bouncing around the last couple of weeks though. So hopefully we get back to Wednesday
yeah,
nights and
yeah.
people can lock that back in. Until then, fans can check out the show on Twitter at Combat Hour, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, Old Head Carb on Twitch. And as always, you can check out our podcast at allaccessmma.com. Check out allaccessmma.com for our video podcast, MMA stories, and the newest MMA news. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good night, Ed, and keep the lungs clean out there.
Yeah, mine. It's impossible with my asthmatic ass.